What's up, everybody? Welcome to On the Ropes. This is the recap of the Loma versus Lopez fight. I'm Pat Healy, joined with Michael Olajide. Can't wait to talk about it with you guys.
Yeah, this is what a shock.
I know, right? What a surprise. Who saw that Lopez was going to win by unanimous decision? I mean, I did not see
Yeah.
that coming.
Well, Tim, who called the fight, one of the guys who called the fight along with Andre, um, he really thought he was going to win. And I really couldn't see it because I didn't believe the kid had the skills that Loma had. I guess that's one of the things you never anticipate why an individual one day doesn't show up without his ability, or is it something that that Lopez did to shut Lomachenko's ability down?
Yeah,
That's the interesting part.
that was the biggest question I really had for you. Like right off the bat, I'm like, why did Loma, it seemed like he, was just kind of giving rounds away. And, was that Loma not showing up, or was there something that you saw Lopez doing that, you got to give Lopez the credit for that?
I think you have to give Lopez the credit for what he did. He came out, he established himself in the first round. He made Lomachenko feel him. And what I mean by that is he hit him, whether it was on the arm, whether it was on the side of the head, whether it was on the ribs. He hit him, and he hit him hard. So he let him know, I'm in the ring and I'm a presence. One of the biggest dissuaders of anything is pain. You know what I mean? When you feel pain, and you're not really into the fight yet, so you're cold, and you feel that pain on your body, and all of a sudden that's almost like the great equalizer. No matter what talent you have, once that man feels pain, then he's going to be hesitant. Once a fighter starts hesitating, he's not winning. He's not moving his hands because he's thinking about the repercussions of if he gets hit again. And when you're cold, it hurts even more than it does. Like later on, when you're 6, 7 rounds in, you can let it go. It's all a part of the fight. But when you're in those first 2 rounds and you feel a man's punch, it's not a comfortable experience. And I think Lomachenko, because he doesn't fight from instinct, he fights out of intellect. And when you fight out of intellect, you're fighting very topical. You're very aware of everything that's going on in the ring. You don't go into that primitive state, whereas you just are able to not even think about pain or the punches or anything like that. And so that I thought was, one of the differences. And it's great for the kid, but for Loma, it's unfortunate. It really is.
Yeah, Lopez, he's the 5th guy, I believe, in the modern era to, capture all the belts in the division. That being said, Devin Haney would say otherwise. He's technically the WBC champ, although, Lomachenko forfeited that belt months ago. So he kind of got it by default. There's a lot of movement in the division, of course, and Lopez made some history last night. He deserves all the credit in the world. But, as that fight got to that halfway point, Loma really started to take over. And it seemed as if, if that fight had a few more rounds in it, it seemed to be swinging the other way. So I'm curious what's next in terms of rematch, or what makes sense there.
Well, I think, Pat, I got to say, with these belts, they're going to have belts. I mean, they're setting too many records. Like all of a sudden, this guy had 5 belts. I'd rather be in the day of Marvin Hagler when you had one middleweight champ, you're a champ, and you beat everybody else that comes along. That means more. Now they have these things fractured up, and I don't know, I'm saying the same thing that's been said before a million times. It means more to a fighter when you have one champion, but it means more to a promoter, I guess, and I guess to maybe to fans when you see a guy walking into the ring with 5 belts on top of him. You know what I mean? But you have that guy who has that one belt. He's the undisputed champion. That's the best case scenario. That's the best thing you can be in this world. And no fighter, I think any fighter in the world would say the same thing. I'd rather have that one belt, king of everybody, than 5 fractured belts. And okay. So having said that, I'm sorry. What was your point again? I lost myself. I went back into I'm like punches.
All good. Yeah, I had a couple points there, but I guess the second one was really, obviously Loma started off really slow, but in the later rounds, it seemed like he completely was starting to take over. Even had some moments where it seemed like he may be able to finish the fight. And it left me with a weird kind of like feeling afterwards. I was like, man, like Lopez put on a great performance, but Loma, to me, he seemed like, not on the night, but he seems still like the guy to me.
I can relate to how Loma was feeling because I'm having a slow start too. Okay, so, but to tell you the truth, I'm saying I fought 12 rounds, I fought 15 rounds. There's a significant difference between 12 and 15. But the thing is, neither one of these guys ever did 15 rounds before. The rule is 12 rounds. So, you have to get the job done within 12 rounds. The problem with 12 rounds, I think, is, especially for a world title fight, you give away those feel out and feeling out rounds. Really, you should be adjusted, adapted, and ready to fire on all cylinders by the end of the second round, the latest. Anything later than that, if you're giving up 3-4 rounds before you're able to get it started, you're a third of the fight behind. You've got to win the next 9 rounds in order to really turn around and get a significant win. It was worse for Lomachenko. He didn't do anything until the 6th round.
Right.
And there was something that stopped him from doing that. I don't know if it was ill preparation. I don't know if they prepared for this kid. I don't know if they did the right things in training in order to prepare for what this kid was going to do. I honestly can't tell you what he did, what Lopez did significantly better than he's ever done before. He didn't. He didn't. There wasn't anything strategically I saw him do in prep that I haven't seen him do before. He applied pressure. He hit hard. He got his angles. He's a nice fighter. He's a complete fighter. I didn't see anything absolutely like he wasn't hooking off the jab, tripling up on the hook. Specifically getting off angles, pivoting a certain way. I think maybe just his power was that much that it weighed in on Lomachenko's mind and it stopped him from doing the things he had to do. I'll just tell you quickly. I fought 12 rounds before, and I fought 12 rounds with Tommy Hearns, and it went the distance. But the thing is, the first 3-4 rounds. In fact, my cornerman, who's Angelo Dundee, a great trainer at the time, he was like, until the 5th, 6th round, he's just move away, give ground, slip, make a miss, frustrate him, and then we'll get him later on. Not the best strategy when you're going up, because again, you've given away those 6 rounds. You have to essentially knock your man out to win.
Right.
That's what you have to do. This kid is strong. Like we talked about beforehand, he's not walking around at 135. Kid's walking around at 150. He's a stronger.
He was noticeably bigger.
Noticeably bigger. He's stronger. He's bigger, and he was able to use that strength to absorb the blows that he did take later on, and not have an adverse effect. And that's one of the things that's just one of the things that went wrong with that fight. And interesting enough, Lomachenko, who's the king of high-tech Lomachenko and everything, he wasn't able to adapt to what this kid did. He wasn't able to switch up on the move. That's what's important. He did apply the pressure later on, and
right.
That was the fight. That was the kind of fight he should have came out 3rd round latest. He should have been fighting like that.
Yeah.
Remember he said to him, he said, "I'm going to take this kid into deep waters and I'm going to drown him."
Right.
That was his words. Those were his words. I'm going to take him into deep water. But you have to make the man, you can't tow him out to deep waters. You have to let him swim out to deep waters, then drown him. You have to make the kid fight. You can't give him, that kid could have done that for 12 rounds. What Lomachenko did, follow Lomachenko around, throw punches, follow him around, throw punches. Lopez could have done that the whole fight, and not a problem. Where Lopez would have had a problem is if by the 2nd round, Lomachenko was standing in front of him, getting his shots off, making a miss, blocking, catching, that kind of stuff. He did not do that, and the kid won an impressive fight.
Yeah, he deserves a lot of credit. Obviously, you can't take anything away from him. He stepped up. He's 23 years old, and now he captured the belts, and he's sitting at the top of the division. And now there's a lot of questions in terms of what's next. Maybe they'll do the rematch. I would love to see it, just because I think, like you said, maybe Loma would come out much hotter earlier on. But there's so many other fights to be made. We have Gervonta Davis versus Leo Santa Cruz coming up in a month or so. He could face the winner of that. He could face Devin Haney. Ryan Garcia's fighting Luke Campbell pretty soon. These are all guys floating around in the mix. I don't really see anyone else, challenging Teofimo after what I saw last night, just because he has that power, he has that speed, and he showed that he can box a little bit, right? With a guy like Lomachenko.
Yeah, he certainly did. I think Lomachenko, again, he didn't establish himself. I think he's going to get the experience he had with Lopez this last fight. I think he's going to be able to take that and use it. Whether it's an emotional journey he wants to go on is another thing altogether. Sometimes guys just like the wind just goes out of their sails. Yeah. I can't understand. I have a hard time understanding what the strategy was in that fight and giving away the first half of the fight. I really don't understand, and that's why I'm always like, I'd love to get sound in the corner and hear what the trainers are saying to the fighters. It's so important because look, your trainer is your eyes. That's all there is to it. He sees what's happening, and a fighter, if you have a trainer in your corner who's experienced it before, he understands the rhythms of the fight. He understands the energy between two fighters going on. You can see when the guy's starting to like get swept away in the currents, or when your guy's coming on, or when he's receding, when he's like not as strong or powerful. And you need to say the right things to cut that flow and make sure your fighter wins. I didn't hear that from his corner. I heard a couple of times some of the guys who commentated on the fight, they said, you're doing good, just keep him at the end of your jab. That's not what you want to hear, especially when you're fighting at this level. You need to have had that experience to say, you know what, you got to throw all caution to the wind. You need to go out there and knock that guy out. If not, put him on his heels, rock him, hurt him, and let them know you're in there. That's all there was to it. The kid didn't respect him until, I keep saying the same thing, kid didn't respect him until the 7th round. But yes, there are interesting fights to be made out there. You're absolutely right. And I'm not sure that the kid wants, Devin Haney and a couple of the other guys that are out there. He kind of, when he said it, he was kind of like, a little hesitant, kind of pulling it back. You know what I mean? So it's interesting, but a very, very impressive win for him.
Yeah, impressive win. And, I think you got to mention also just a little controversy around the fight and the scoring itself. Some of the judges had it 119. One of the judges had it 119 to 111, which is a crazy scorecard, giving one round to Loma. That's just ridiculous. It was the right decision. Lopez won the fight, I believe, but it was very close. It was probably 115, 113. Andre Ward had it a draw. I don't know about that, but some of the scores were crazy.
Yeah. Well, I think Andre also had Lomachenko. He wanted to see Lomachenko win.
Yeah. There's a little bias there.
Yeah, we close it close. But at the same time, yeah, you could see the rounds, like they gave the second round to Lomachenko, I believe, and then probably like a lot of the later rounds, maybe from the 7th round on, when he started to establish himself and go forward. And I can make an argument for that, but I definitely thought that, without a doubt, Lopez had won. I was hoping that, Lomachenko would do better myself as well. But can't take away the victory from the kid.
No, you can't.
He really did it. Yeah, he really did it. But as you were saying, scoring is always such a subjective thing, and it's what people see. And sometimes referees are on certain sides of the ring, and they don't see the same shots as the other guy saw. But I don't know if they should really take fighters that are retired,
right,
and use them as your referees, as your judges. I really believe so. You'll get a much fairer shake and understand. They can explain their card and as to why.
Right.
Some people are giving people fights because they're giving points to a guy because he's going forward, but he's not scoring. That doesn't make any sense, because the boxing is all about putting the fist on that guy's face. If I'm putting my fist on his face more than he's putting it on mine, I'm winning. That's all there is to it. It's really rather simple that way.
Yep.
And And sometimes you can tell, what's an effective punch and what's an arm punch, and you can give points for that. But only a fighter who's been experienced can do that. And I think as long as we have people who have never gotten in a ring, and I hate to say it because I love the judges. The judges are great people. Nothing against them at all. But as long as you have people that have been in the ring, they don't experience the difference between a flicking jab and a sharp jab and a shotgun jab, and they don't understand the power difference and the speed difference and the scoring difference and what that does to what that's doing to his body, to a dude's face.
Right.
You can't really score it accurately. You know what I mean? I hope that sounds good, but it's really more like a slap, and you think it's resounding, and you're like, and some people are like, oh my god, but then
there were a few of those. There was a few of those punches from Teofimo that they seemed like big shots, and then on the replay slow mo, you saw it was hitting the gloves or the chest, and there was a lot of that last night.
Exactly, and somebody who's not who doesn't know the game, hasn't been in the ring, wouldn't understand that. You can't score those kinds of things. You know what I mean? You really can't.
But to talk a little bit about what I thought was interesting in the fight itself was when Lomachenko started to turn it on and find some success, he was pressuring Lopez and putting him on the back foot. Now when I look at a future matchup between possibly Gervonta Davis, a guy who comes forward and will most certainly bring the pressure and try to put Lopez on the back foot. What did that look like to you? Does that look like a potential hole in Lopez's game and his ability to fight going backwards, and a guy that brings that pressure towards him?
I think anytime you can make a fighter fight different than how he usually fights, it's to your advantage. So that's like level one. When you're looking at an opponent, you want to take him out of his comfort zone and have him do things that you don't think he can do. Like, of course you're going to have, you want Lopez to back up. He tends to keep his hands right a little bit low and away from his face. And you would think that, there would be openings that way as well. So there are many different ways you can attack somebody like Lopez. But one thing that you have to always deal with is his level of intensity. The kid is, he's like, you're going to have to prove it to me. If you want it, you're going to have to knock me out. And I can really appreciate that about him. He's a warrior. He'll go out on his shield. He'll do whatever he has to do. I mean, the judges had the fight. He could have walked around the last round and they still would have gave him the fight. You know what I mean? But no, he got cut. He got the huge slice across the eye, blood dripping, and he still went at Lomachenko and said, I'm taking this fight. So I think you're dealing with a kid that has a lot of heart. He wants to bring the best that he can to he wants people to be entertained. He wants to be respected.
Yeah.
And he able to do that last night. And I think he'll do that in all his fights from now on. It's his personality. It's his character.
No doubt. And with Lomachenko, assuming that he doesn't get the rematch, where does a guy like that go now mentally? And also, what do you think his team would want in a fight for him next? Would they want a layup fight for him? Would they want a confidence booster? Or do they want him to, get right back in there with one of the many names in the division that's like at the top contender type fight? Did they lose confidence in that fight?
I think that, he went to lightweight, but I don't know if he went to lightweight to go up for the challenge or just to grab the belts, or whether he really needed to physically move up to that weight division. So there's a number of things. If he still has that fire in him, I mean, again, 400 amateur fights is a lot of fights, and he hasn't had that many professional fights, but he's certainly, like we talked about before, he maybe has 400 amateur fights, but he's also had, just hundreds of thousands of rounds of sparring going up to that. And even as a pro, he's had 15 or so professional fights, but he's had just hundreds, thousands of rounds of sparring preparing for that, taking shots, dishing out shots, and it's just like how much, how focused can he stay, how in the game, and if he feels like, that's it, if he doesn't have that, if that fire isn't in his gut right now at this moment, then it may be, it may be something he may want to consider, like not going back in there, because at that point you only start getting hurt, you still only start getting caught.
But maybe
this kid was able to take away his timing,
right?
And that's something, he's the master of time. Like, he's in the ring and the fight's fought at his pace, when he wants to fight it, how he wants to fight it. This kid was able to take, he's like, give me that, took that watch. You know what I mean? I'm setting the time for this. You're fighting when I say you fight. Your defense when I say your defense. You know what I mean? He just established himself as a stronger guy. So Lomachenko right now, you know, we need to find out where he is mentally. If he said he's going to go back and he's going to look at the fight. He wasn't sure, you know, whether he had a lot of class in losing, but it's going to be an interesting future for him. I would like to see a rematch.
I would like to see it too, and you know, to kind of repeat what you just said, is it seemed like the tread on the tires per se was more a mental thing with Lomachenko than it was physical, because, you know, at the end of the fight, I said, man, you know, Loma really turned it on there. Like, he didn't seem like he lost himself physically, but whatever that gap was in the, you know, first half of the fight, what caused that? Was it a mental focus issue? Was it, you know, a little chink in the armor mentally? There was something missing there, and that's where the question is. So I don't think it's a physical thing with him. I think he still has it, the ability to do everything physically, but the mental side, maybe that's where the tread on the tire is starting to appear.
You know, whenever there's an unanticipated loss, it is usually because of it's a mental thing. It isn't usually physical, especially somebody, you know, someone the level that he's at. It's never usually that. Sometimes we have these little things that happen going into a fight that, you know, some fighters are superstitious, and you know, certain things happen and it just takes your mind off your goal. It's just, I don't know how to explain it. It's like these little psychological disruptions, and then all of a sudden you get in the ring and you had this little thing that put you off, and the fighter hits you, and it just sort of like, I don't know what it is. It just causes you to hesitate, and it causes that's the only thing I can see is why he wasn't able to get off, why he wasn't able to establish himself, why he wasn't able to, you know, dominate this kid. Again, he wasn't doing anything. It was a workmanlike performance out of this kid. It wasn't like he was more talented than Lomachenko. He didn't slip punches better. He didn't necessarily punch any harder, really. He just his punch output was higher, obviously, and he was in his face. He was aggressive, and something. I guess Lomachenko didn't really expect that of him. Right. He heard it. He heard it beforehand, but he thought, you know, hey, maybe this kid's gonna be afraid of my legend, and he really wasn't. So hats off to him. You know what I mean? Because a lot of guys really do get, you know, they talk all that stuff, they get in the ring and they don't bring it behind them.
Yeah, and a lot of people are beat by Lomachenko before they get in there, just like as you said, you know, the legend of him. Yeah, it was a great fight.
To have 15 fights and to have a legend already.
It's almost like, because they're all the title fights. It's like his second pro fight was a title fight, so it's like that's all he knows is you know, fighting on that stage.
You know, he had one loss before, and I forget the kid's name, Salido. But he was also, sorry?
Salido.
Yeah, Salido, that's right. And Salido was also very aggressive and very much like, maybe not as gifted as Lopez is, but he more or less did the same thing. And that kind of, maybe that's the blueprint to Lomachenko. You know, no one can stand there and joust with him. You know what I mean? You can't do that tit for tat thing with him because he understands all that. But Salido was probably physically stronger than Lomachenko because he only had like one or two pro fights at that time.
Yeah, it was his second.
This kid, exactly. Now this kid with Lomachenko stepping up to lightweight, and this kid coming down as a bigger guy down to lightweight, probably the same thing. You know, he probably experienced the same thing. At least some of the same things, that physical strength, that kind of power you're feeling that really, you know, that causes you to hesitate. And that's everything in boxing, especially for a reflex fighter like Lomachenko. He's a reflex fighter. He needs to be able to let his hands go at any point in time. He hesitated, took him off the point, and the kid won the fight.
Yep, he capitalized on the moment. Teofimo Lopez, the new champ at lightweight, the new guy to beat on top of the hill. It was a great fight. I hope you guys enjoyed this little recap, and we got some more coming for you soon for the Davis Santa Cruz matchup. Another great matchup at the lightweight division. So, I'm Pat Healy, Brooklyn Boxing Podcast with Michael Olajide. And thanks.
And I'm now 2-1, and I'm a little bit upset with that.
I know. Yeah, I thought that one was in the bag for us, but man, on to the next fight week.
We'll get it right. We'll get it right.
Awesome. Well, all right. See you, man.